Imagine this. You're watching your favorite movie, and instead of just enjoying the plot, you're also picking up on the way people speak, the way they use words and expressions that are completely natural, yet hard to find in a textbook. Sounds pretty amazing, right? That's exactly what we're diving into today. How you can master English by watching movies. Not only is this method fun, but it's also incredibly effective. Movies are a treasure trove of real, everyday language. The characters don't speak like your English teacher. They speak like real people, with all the quirks, slang, and idioms that make English so rich and varied. Plus, there's the added bonus of seeing how body language and facial expressions accompany speech, giving you a fuller understanding of how English is used in context. Let's start with a simple but powerful tip. Use subtitles. But here's the catch. Use English subtitles. This way, you're not only listening but also reading the language at the same time. It's like a double dose of English. You'll catch phrases you might otherwise miss, and you'll get a clearer sense of how words are spelled and pronounced. Plus, it helps you link the sounds to their written form, which is especially useful when dealing with words that don't sound the way they're spelled. Now, think about repetition. Watching a movie once is great, but if you want to really learn from it, watch certain scenes multiple times. I know it might sound a bit tedious, but trust me, it works. Pick a scene with dialogue that's rich in vocabulary or phrases you want to master. Watch it once for the story, and then go back and watch it again with a focus on the language. Try to mimic the actors. Pay attention to how they pronounce words, the rhythm of their speech, and even their intonation. It's like a free acting class that doubles as an English lesson. If you're wondering how to choose the right movies, here's a tip. Start with something that matches your current level of English. If you're a beginner, you might want to avoid movies with complicated plots or heavy accents. Instead, go for something a bit simpler, maybe a romantic comedy or an animated film. As you get more confident, you can challenge yourself with more complex films, like dramas or historical pieces. Accents are another fascinating aspect of movies. English is spoken with a variety of accents around the world, and movies are a great way to expose yourself to this diversity. You might start with American English, which is widely understood, but don't stop there. Explore British films, Australian comedies, and even Canadian dramas. Each has its own unique way of speaking English, and getting familiar with these different accents will make you a much more versatile English speaker. One of the best ways to engage with movies is by trying to transcribe what you hear. Pick a short scene, maybe just a minute or two, and try to write down everything the characters say. It's harder than it sounds because spoken English often includes informal phrases, contractions, and reductions that you might not recognize right away. After you've transcribed it, compare your work with the actual subtitles or the script if you can find it online. This exercise will sharpen both your listening and writing skills. Speaking of listening, here's something that might surprise you. Watching movies without subtitles can be a great way to improve your listening skills. It's challenging, yes, but it forces you to really focus on the language. Start with scenes that have simple dialogue and gradually work your way up to more complex conversations. You'll be amazed at how quickly your ear adapts to the rhythm and flow of English. Now, let's talk about shadowing, a technique that's incredibly effective for improving your speaking skills. Shadowing is when you repeat what the characters in a movie are saying, right after they say it. It helps you get used to the sounds and rhythms of English, and it's also a lot of fun. Pick a scene with dialogue that you find interesting and try to match the actors word for word. Don't worry if you don't get it perfect right away. Like anything, it takes practice. But the more you do it, the more natural it will feel. Movies are also a window into culture, And understanding the cultural context of what's being said can help you grasp the deeper meaning behind the words. For example, humor in movies often relies on cultural references or wordplay that might not make sense if you don't know the context. By watching a variety of films, you'll start to pick up on these subtleties, which will make you a more nuanced English speaker. Ever notice how certain lines from movies stick with you long after the credits roll? That's the power of emotion in learning. When you're emotionally engaged with what you're watching, whether you're laughing, crying, or on the edge of your seat, you're more likely to remember the language used in those moments. That's why movies can be such a powerful tool for learning English. They engage you on multiple levels: visually, emotionally, and linguistically. Another benefit of watching movies is that they expose you to different registers of language. In any given film, you might hear everything from formal speech to casual banter, from poetic monologues to everyday small talk. This variety helps you understand how English can be adapted to different situations, making you a more flexible and effective communicator. Let's not forget the importance of context in language learning. In movies, language is always used within a specific context, whether it's a heated argument, a romantic confession, or a comedic misunderstanding. By paying attention to how language is used in these different contexts, you can learn how to choose your words more effectively in real-life situations. One of the most effective ways to learn from movies is to make it a social activity. If you have friends who are also learning English, watch a movie together and then discuss it in English. Talk about your favorite scenes, the characters, the plot twists, anything that comes to mind. This not only reinforces what you've learned but also gives you a chance to practice speaking in a natural, conversational way. If you're watching movies on your own, don't worry, there are still plenty of ways to engage with the content. After you've watched a film, try writing a review or a summary in English. It doesn't have to be long or complicated. Just write about what you liked or didn't like, or try to describe the plot in your own words. This exercise helps solidify the new vocabulary and expressions you've picked up, and it's also a great way to practice your writing skills. Another way to engage with movies is by creating your own dialogues. After watching a film, pick a scene you enjoyed and imagine how you would have written the dialogue differently. What would you have the characters say? How would you change their interactions? This creative exercise not only helps you think more deeply about the language but also allows you to play with it in a way that's fun and engaging. Let's talk about the power of repetition again, but this time with a twist. Instead of watching the same movie over and over, try watching different movies with similar themes or genres. For example, if you're a fan of romantic comedies, watch several of them in a row. You'll start to notice common phrases, vocabulary, and even sentence structures that are specific to that genre. This kind of focused repetition helps reinforce your learning while keeping things fresh and interesting. One of the challenges of learning English through movies is dealing with different accents and dialects. But instead of seeing this as a barrier, think of it as an opportunity. Exposing yourself to different ways of speaking English will make you a more versatile and adaptable speaker. If you find a particular accent challenging, don't shy away from it. Embrace it. Watch more movies in that accent and try to mimic it. The more you practice, the easier it will become. Now, let's talk about pacing. Movies often have a fast pace, especially during intense or emotional scenes. This can make it difficult to catch every word, but don't let that discourage you. If you miss something, go back and watch the scene again. Over time, you'll get better at keeping up with the pace of natural, spoken English. Movies also provide an excellent opportunity to learn about cultural norms and social cues. The way characters interact, the customs they follow, and the societal norms depicted in movies can give you valuable insights into the culture behind the language. This understanding will make your use of English more authentic and culturally appropriate. Another powerful technique is to engage with movies in different ways. For example, after watching a movie, you could listen to a podcast or watch a documentary about how the movie was made. This not only gives you more context but also exposes you to different types of English, like the technical language used in filmmaking or the informal banter of a behind-the-scenes interview. Let's talk about the visual aspect of movies. When you're watching a movie, you're not just hearing English, you're also seeing it in action. Body language, facial expressions, and visual context all play a role in communication, and movies are a great way to learn how these nonverbal cues complement the language. Pay attention to how characters use gestures or facial expressions to emphasize what they're saying. This will help you understand the full spectrum of communication in English. One of the best things about learning English through movies is that it doesn't feel like studying. You're having fun, you're engaged with the story, and the learning happens almost without you noticing. This is one of the reasons why this method is so effective. It taps into your natural curiosity and enjoyment, making the learning process more sustainable and enjoyable. Let's not forget about the emotional impact of movies. When you're emotionally engaged, whether you're laughing at a comedy, feeling tense during a thriller, or tearing up at a drama, your brain is more likely to remember the language used in those moments. That's why iconic movie lines tend to stick with us for years. They're tied to strong emotions, and when you learn English through movies, you're tapping into that emotional memory, which can be incredibly powerful. Another interesting aspect of learning English through movies is how it can help you with the rhythm and flow of the language. English has a certain musicality to it, with stresses and intonations that can be hard to grasp through reading alone. But when you watch a movie, you're experiencing the language as it's meant to be heard, full of rises and falls, quick exchanges, and pauses that convey meaning as much as the words themselves. By paying attention to these patterns, you can improve your own fluency and start to speak English in a more natural, flowing way. Let's dive deeper into the idea of cultural immersion. When you watch movies from different English-speaking countries, you're not just learning the language, you're also getting a glimpse into the culture that shapes it. This cultural context can help you understand why certain expressions are used and how they fit into the broader tapestry of English communication. For instance, a British movie might teach you about the subtleties of British humor, while an Australian film could introduce you to slang that's unique to that region. The more you immerse yourself in these different cultural contexts, the richer your understanding of English will become. Now, let's talk about humor. Humor is one of the trickiest aspects of any language because it often relies on wordplay, cultural references, and timing. But it's also one of the most rewarding to master because it allows you to connect with people on a deeper level. Watching comedies in English can be a great way to get a feel for how humor works in the language. Pay attention to the jokes, the punchlines, and how the characters use language to create humor. Try to understand not just what's funny, but why it's funny. This will not only improve your comprehension, but also help you use humor in your own conversations. Another fantastic way to use movies in your English learning journey is by focusing on specific vocabulary. Let's say you're trying to improve your business English. You could watch movies or TV shows set in a corporate environment, like The Wolf of Wall Street or Suits. These kinds of films are packed with industry-specific vocabulary and expressions that you can learn and then use in your own professional life. By watching movies that align with your learning goals, you can tailor your experience to meet your specific needs. Speaking of goals, it's important to set clear objectives when using movies as a learning tool. Instead of just watching passively, decide what you want to focus on. Maybe it's improving your listening skills, expanding your vocabulary, or getting better at understanding different accents. Whatever it is, keep that goal in mind as you watch, and take notes if necessary. Over time, you'll start to see real progress in those areas. Another tip is to watch movies that are adaptations of books you've read in English. This is especially useful if you're working on improving your reading and comprehension skills. By first reading the book, you get a solid understanding of the plot and characters, which makes it easier to follow the movie. Plus, you can compare the dialogue in the book with how it's spoken in the movie, giving you insight into how written language translates into spoken language. Let's also touch on the idea of language exposure. The more you expose yourself to English, the more familiar it will become. Watching movies regularly is a great way to increase your exposure to the language in a way that's enjoyable and sustainable. Unlike traditional study methods, which can sometimes feel repetitive or boring, watching movies keeps things fresh and interesting. Each film is a new experience, with different characters, settings, and language to explore. But what if you want to take your learning to the next level? Consider watching movies without subtitles, or better yet, with subtitles in your native language turned off. This forces you to rely entirely on your listening skills. It might be tough at first, but it's one of the best ways to improve your ability to understand spoken English in real time. Start with movies where the dialogue is clear and straightforward, and gradually work your way up to films with faster or more complex speech. Let's not overlook the importance of body language in movies. Nonverbal communication is a huge part of how we convey meaning, and movies give you a visual guide to how body language complements spoken language. Watch how characters use gestures, facial expressions, and posture to add emphasis to their words. Understanding these cues will not only help you interpret what's being said but also improve your own ability to communicate effectively in English. One of the most exciting aspects of learning English through movies is the variety of language you're exposed to. Different genres, time periods, and settings introduce you to a wide range of vocabulary, expressions, and dialects. Whether you're watching a historical drama with formal language or a modern-day comedy with lots of slang, you're getting a taste of the rich diversity of the English language. This variety helps you build a more versatile and well-rounded vocabulary. Another benefit of watching movies in English is that it helps you get used to the speed of natural speech. In real-life conversations, people don't speak slowly and clearly like in language lessons. They speak at a normal pace, often with words running together or being shortened. Movies replicate this natural speech pattern, giving you a chance to practice understanding English as it's actually spoken by native speakers. Over time, this will help you become more comfortable with fast-paced conversations in real life. Let's not forget the importance of consistency. Like any skill, mastering English requires regular practice, and watching movies is a great way to keep that practice enjoyable. Try to make it a habit to watch at least one movie in English every week. This not only keeps you engaged with the language but also ensures that you're consistently improving your listening and comprehension skills. Another creative way to use movies in your learning journey is by writing your own dialogues. After watching a film, pick a scene you found interesting and rewrite the dialogue in your own words. This helps you practice constructing sentences and using the vocabulary you've learned in a new context. It's also a fun way to engage with the language creatively. If you're feeling ambitious, try watching movies in English that are outside your usual comfort zone. For example, if you normally watch romantic comedies, challenge yourself with a science fiction movie or a historical drama. These genres often have their own unique vocabulary and language patterns, which can help you expand your linguistic repertoire. Another great way to learn from movies is by focusing on the language of persuasion. Many films, especially those with strong character-driven plots, features scenes where characters are trying to convince others to do something or see things their way. Pay attention to how they use language to persuade. What arguments do they make? What tone do they use? Understanding these techniques can help you become more effective in your own English communication, especially in situations where you need to be persuasive. Movies also offer a great opportunity to practice summarizing. After you've watched a film, try summarizing the plot in your own words. This helps reinforce your understanding of the story while giving you practice in organizing and expressing your thoughts in English. You can do this either in writing or by speaking aloud, which also gives you the chance to practice your pronunciation and fluency. Let's talk about character analysis. Movies are full of interesting, complex characters, and analyzing their language can give you insights into how personality and language interact. Pay attention to how different characters speak. What kind of vocabulary do they use? How does their speech reflect their personality, social status, or background? This kind of analysis not only helps you understand the language better, but also gives you a deeper appreciation of how English can be used to convey subtle nuances of character. Another fun exercise is to compare the original movie with its dubbed version in your native language, if one exists. This allows you to see how translators handle different expressions, jokes, and cultural references. It's a great way to understand the flexibility and creativity involved in language translation, and it can also help you see how certain English expressions might be adapted to fit different cultural contexts. Finally, don't forget to have fun with it. Learning English through movies is one of the most enjoyable ways to improve your skills. The more you enjoy the process, the more motivated you'll be to keep going. So pick movies that interest you, explore different genres, and don't be afraid to challenge yourself with something new. The world of English language cinema is vast and varied, offering endless opportunities for learning and growth. So, the next time you sit down to watch a movie, remember that you're not just being entertained, you're also learning. With every scene, every line of dialogue, and every new word, you're getting closer to mastering the English language. That's all for today's episode. I hope you found some new strategies to make your English learning journey a little more cinematic and a lot more fun. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast platforms so you never miss out on our weekly tips and tricks. And of course, if you know someone who could use a little English boost, share this podcast with them. Thanks for tuning in to Learn English Every Day. Until next time, keep practicing, keep watching, and keep learning.